The hand floats into my line of sight, sparkling under the muted cafe lights. It's delicate, manicured, and on that finger a ring gleams. It's a simple solitaire, nothing ostentatious, but there's something sickeningly familiar about the setting, the way the light catches the stone. The woman smiles, a little nervously, a little triumphantly. She slides it across the polished tabletop towards me.
"He wanted you to see this," she says.
Her voice is soft, almost kind, which makes it worse. "He said you needed to know he's finally moving on." My breath catches. Moving on? From what? From me? My husband? My mind races, trying to connect this stranger, this ring, this surreal moment, to my life. Then I see him, sitting across the table, pale, frozen, eyes wide with a terror I've never seen him display. It clicks. The familiarity of the ring. He bought me a ring years ago, a promise ring before we were engaged. It wasn't the engagement ring, but a simple solitaire he picked out himself. This ring. It's almost identical. A mirror image. And then her words sink in. "He said you needed to know he's finally moving on." She thinks I'm
His past. His ex.
the one he told stories about, painted as the obstacle, the ghost he was escaping. He didn't just cheat.
He rewrote reality.
And this woman, holding a ring meant to mirror mine, is caught in his lie. My lips part, but no sound comes out. The world tilts. If you've ever felt like the ground gave way beneath you, like everything you thought was solid turned to dust, tell me. Let me know where you're watching from, what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Life before this had a rhythm, a quiet hum of shared existence. 14 years. That's how long we'd been building this life, brick by brick, memory by memory. Our house, a comfortable space filled with familiar objects, echoes of laughter, the silent understanding that comes from years of living side by side. He was my anchor, my steady presence. We had settled into the quiet phase of marriage, past the fireworks of early romance, into a deeper, calmer affection. Or so I believed. He worked long hours, his job demanding, and I had my own world, my small online business, my friends, my routine. We weren't joined at the hip, but we were connected. An invisible thread, strong and unbreakable. We talked about the future, about maybe renovating the kitchen next year, about that trip we always wanted to take. It was normal, peaceful, secure. Looking back, there must have been cracks I chose not to see. Little shifts in his routine, moments of distance I attributed to stress from work. A phone he kept closer, a sudden interest in his appearance. But nothing overt, nothing that screamed danger. My world felt safe, predictable. I trusted him. Completely. He was my husband. That meant something. It meant everything. The disruption came not as a thunderclap, but a chilling whisper delivered by a stranger. It was a Tuesday. The afternoon sun slanted through my office window. My phone rang, an unknown number. Usually I let them go to voicemail. But something made me answer. A wrong number, maybe? "Hello," I said, my voice neutral. A woman's voice, hesitant but determined. "Is this Sarah?" "My name." "Yes, it is." "Okay," she took a breath. "Look, my name is Jessica. I think we need to talk. It's about Mark, my husband's name."
Mark.
My blood ran cold. Jessica? Who was Jessica? And why would she need to talk to me about Mark? A colleague? A friend of a friend? Mark, I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mark who?" "Mark Jenkins," she said, relief in her voice. "Your ex-husband?" The word hit me like a physical blow. Ex-husband. Mark wasn't my ex. He was my husband. My current husband. What was happening? I think you have the wrong Sarah. I stammered. Mark Jenkins is my husband. My current husband. Silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Then, a different tone. Not hesitant anymore. Harder.
Confused.
"No, that's not right. Mark told me he was divorced. He said his ex-wife was Sarah. He said she was difficult, that he finally got free. My heart hammered against my ribs. Difficult? Got free? What was he telling this woman? Who is this woman? Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling now. I'm his girlfriend, she said, and the two words extinguished any doubt. Girlfriend. My husband. This woman. It was real. This wasn't a mistake. Not a wrong number. This was the ground giving way. His girlfriend? I whispered. It felt like a foreign language. Yes, she said. We've been seeing each other for 6 months, 6 months. 6 months of lies, of stolen moments, of a double life I knew nothing about. 6 months of him coming home to me, sleeping beside me, eating dinner with me, while building a whole other world. He told me about you, she continued, her voice softening slightly, as if she was trying to be sympathetic to the difficult ex. He said it was a messy divorce, that you made things hard for him. But he said he's finally happy now. With me.
Happy.
With her. He was telling her I was his ex. That he was free. That I was the problem. The narrative solidified in my mind. He wasn't just cheating. He was actively dismantling my reality, painting me as a ghost from his past to the woman he was building a future with. My hand was shaking so hard, I almost dropped the phone. I don't know what to say. I
wanted to reach out, she said.
He said you sometimes contacted him. I just wanted to say he's with me now.
He's moved on.
We're serious. Serious. The word hung in the air. How serious? 6 months was serious. Telling her I was his ex was serious. Building a narrative that erased me was serious. Look, she said, her voice firming up. I know this is probably hard to hear, but he's building a new life. He's getting his freedom back. Freedom? From me? From our life. Then she said it. The words that would echo for weeks. He even bought me a ring.
To show how committed he is.
A promise.
A ring.
My stomach clenched. A promise. He was promising her a future. With a ring. While telling her his current wife was a difficult ex. The phone felt heavy, dead in my hand. I couldn't breathe. I have to go, I choked out. Okay, she said, sounding a little confused by my lack of an ex-wife reaction. I hope you can move on too, Sarah. Then she hung up. I sat there, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, the silence of my office suddenly deafening. Sarah, the difficult ex. The ghost. He had erased me. Systematically. To this woman, I wasn't his wife of 14 years. I was a footnote. A problem he'd solved. The initial shock was a physical blow. I felt nauseous, disoriented. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed water on my face. Looked in the mirror. Was this the face of a difficult ex? This face that had aged alongside his, shared secrets with him, loved him through thick and thin. He came home that evening oblivious. Or pretending to be. He kissed me hello, asked about my day, settled into his armchair with the newspaper. The picture of normal. The lie was so deep, so ingrained, I couldn't reconcile the man in front of me with the monster I'd spoken to on the phone. How could I confront him? What would I say? Your girlfriend called me, thinking I was your ex, and told me you bought her a ring? It sounded insane. He would deny it. He would twist it. He would say I was crazy, jealous, the difficult ex come to life. He had already built the narrative. My word against his, plus the word of a woman who believed his lies. I spent the next few days in a fog of confusion and pain. I watched him. Every glance, every word, every gesture. Was it real? Was any of it real? The comfort of our life together now felt like a cage built on deceit. The house felt cold, alien. Sleeping beside him was unbearable. I would lie awake, inches away from him, while my mind screamed with questions. Where had he been? What had they done? What lies had he told? What did he see in her that he no longer saw in me? My early struggles were internal. A war waged within myself. The urge to explode, to shatter the facade, battled with a paralyzing fear of the truth and the consequences. If I confronted him and he denied it, gaslit me, what then? Would I lose him for good, but honest terms, framed as the irrational wife? I started to search.
Discreetly.
Checking his car mileage, normal. Looking through his email, nothing obvious. His texts were password protected, of course. I felt like a spy in my own home, a detective on a case where my own life was the crime scene. The pain was a constant ache, sometimes a sharp stab. Every "I love you" he uttered felt like a poison dart. Every touch felt like a violation. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I lost weight. My friends noticed I was quiet, withdrawn. I mumbled excuses about work stress. How could I tell anyone? How could I admit that the man everyone saw as steady, reliable Mark was living a double life, and worse, erasing me from it? The shame was immense, not just for his actions, but for my blindness, my trust. The turning point came one sleepless night. I was sitting in the dark living room, the silence amplifying the chaos in my head. I was crying, quietly, the tears tracking paths through the dust I hadn't bothered to clean. I felt weak, pathetic, a victim. Then a flicker of something else. Anger. Cold, hard anger. He had done this to me. He had built a lie. He had tried to make me irrelevant. The difficult ex. The ghost. But I wasn't an ex. I wasn't a ghost. I was his wife. His current wife. And he had underestimated me. He thought he could simply write me out of the script. The anger solidified into resolve. I wasn't going to be the discarded wife, mourning her lost life while he rode off into the sunset with his new love, having successfully villainized me.
No.
If he wanted to play games, if he wanted to build fantasies and cast me as the villain, I would play too. But I would write my own ending. The midpoint shift was internal. The shift from hurt to calculation. From tears to strategy. The mistress, Jessica, had called me thinking I was the ex. That meant Mark had given her a false narrative. He had painted me as someone from his past, someone he was trying to escape.
Why?
To make himself seem available? To make their relationship feel less like an affair and more like a new beginning after a difficult past? Whatever the reason, his lie was elaborate and crucial. Jessica believed him. She believed I was the difficult ex. She had even shown me, or intended to show the ex, a ring. That ring. The mirror of mine. A symbol of his deceit. The idea began to form, chilling and precise. What if I didn't correct her? What if I leaned into his lie? What if I let her believe I was the difficult ex for a little longer? What information might she unknowingly reveal? How else could I use his fabricated reality against him? I started researching Jessica. Her full name from the caller ID, I saved it. A quick search online. Social media profiles. She was younger, successful in her career. Her profiles were public enough to give me glimpses into her life. Pictures. Of her, her friends, her apartment. Nothing of Mark. He was careful. But I could see her world. I realized he must have compartmentalized his life, completely. Keeping us separate. Building different stories for different people.
To her, I was the past.
To his friends, maybe his marriage was struggling, a slow fade. To me, everything was supposedly fine. The rising challenges came in the form of maintaining the facade at home while planning my countermove. It was mentally exhausting. Playing the loving wife during the day, while at night, I was gathering evidence, plotting. Every conversation with Mark was a tightrope walk. Did he suspect anything? Was he watching me? My own home felt like enemy territory. Jessica contacted me again a week later. A message this time. Through a social media platform, she must have found me on using my name. She still thought I was the ex. Hi, Sarah. It's Jessica.
From the other day.
I know you probably don't want to talk, but I just wanted to say, I hope you can find peace.
Mark is really happy now.
We're building a good life together. He deserves to be happy after everything. Everything. What everything? Had he told her? This message, framed as sympathetic, felt like a deliberate jab from the new woman to the old. But for me, it was fuel. She was reinforcing his narrative. She truly believed he was the victim of a difficult ex. I debated how to respond. Should I unleash the truth? Expose him to her? But what would that achieve? Chaos? Her denial? Mark turning it around, saying I was harassing them?
No.
I needed to use his lie, not destroy it prematurely. I decided to play the role she expected. The slightly unhinged, still attached ex. I waited a day. Then I replied. Peace? You think you know anything about peace? You have no idea what he's really like. You have no idea of what you're getting into. It was vague enough to sound like bitter ex-wife talk. But it was the truth. She had no idea what he was really like. She had no idea she was getting into a relationship built on a foundation of elaborate lies. Her reply came quickly. Look, I know you're hurting, but you need to let him go. He's told me everything. I know it wasn't easy, but he's moved on. Don't make this harder than it has to be.
He's told me everything.
That sentence sealed my plan. He had fed her a complete, false history. He had armed her with his version of events, positioning himself as the wronged party, the escapee. You believe him? I wrote back, letting the simulated bitterness seep in. He's a master manipulator. You'll find out eventually. And when you do, don't say I didn't warn you. This was risky. I was baiting her, reinforcing her belief that I was the crazy ex, but also planting a seed of doubt. Would she dismiss it as bitter ramblings? Or would it fester? She didn't reply immediately. The silence was tense. Had I gone too far? Or had I hooked her? The deepening crisis wasn't just the emotional toll, it was the tangible reality of his deception. I started noticing more. Expenses on bank statements I couldn't account for, restaurants, weekend trips. He was spending our money on her, on this false life. The betrayal felt deeper, dirtier. It wasn't just emotional infidelity, it was financial as well. Our shared resources, funding his lies. I felt trapped. Every day the lie continued. It felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I was living with a stranger, a deceiver, in a house that was supposed to be our sanctuary. The weight of it was crushing. I felt isolated, unable to confide in anyone, carrying this toxic secret alone. The perfect life I thought I had was a mirage. My own business suffered. My focus was shattered. My friends grew more concerned. I had to push them away gently, unable to explain the chasm that had opened up in my life. I was adrift in a sea of lies, clinging to a fragile plan that felt increasingly desperate. One evening, Mark came home unusually late. He looked tired, stressed. He mumbled something about a late meeting. As he walked past me, I caught a faint floral scent, not my perfume. My stomach turned. Another lie, layered on top of the others. That night, I couldn't pretend anymore. I slept on the sofa, curled up in a ball, the cold leather a stark contrast to the warmth of our bed, now tainted by his presence. The house was silent, but in my head, the noise was deafening. The echo of Jessica's voice, the image of the ring, the weight of his betrayal. I knew I couldn't live like this. Not for another day. The risk of my plan failing was high, but the risk of doing nothing, of letting him succeed in erasing me, was higher. The thought of him continuing his double life, eventually maybe even leaving me for her, having successfully painted me as the difficult ex to everyone. I couldn't let that happen. I had to act. The turning point solidified into a concrete plan. I needed to bring his two worlds crashing together. In public. In a way that left no room for denial or manipulation. Jessica was the key. His lie to her was the weapon. The ring was the trigger. How to orchestrate it? I needed them both in the same place at the same time, with Jessica still under the impression I was the difficult ex. I decided to use her need for validation, her belief in Mark's narrative, against her. I waited another few days. Then I messaged her again, playing the ex role with carefully chosen words.
Fine.
You want to believe him? Go ahead. But I'm tired of his lies affecting my life. Maybe we should talk. Face to face. You and me. Get things straight. No games. This was the hook. I was challenging her, subtly, appealing to her desire to definitively handle the crazy ex. It felt manipulative, cold. But I was past caring. He had stripped me of my warmth, replaced it with ice. She responded cautiously this time. Talk. What is there to talk about? About him. About his stories.
About how he paints people.
Maybe you need to hear a different perspective. Not everything is as simple as he makes it seem. I was walking a tightrope. I needed to sound like I was still focused on him from the perspective of an ex, but hinting at his deceit in a way that would pique her curiosity or defensive loyalty to him. He told me everything, she repeated. Did he tell you about his wife? I typed, then paused.
No, too soon.
I deleted it. Did he tell you about how he handles problems? How he discards people when they're inconvenient? Better. Vague enough. There was a long pause. Then, maybe you should stop projecting your issues onto him. He's changed. Changed? He was still lying to her about me. Changed? I shot back. People like him don't change. They just get better at hiding things. Another pause. Then, look, I don't know what your deal is. But maybe meeting would help you get closure. So you can see he's moved on. And leave us alone.
Perfect.
Closure for the ex. She was walking right into it. She wanted to prove to me, and perhaps solidify for herself, that she was the reality, and I was the past.
Fine, he replied.
Where and when? We agreed on a cafe. Public but discreet. Mid-afternoon on a weekday. A time when Mark was usually working. But I had a plan for that too. This was the riskiest part. I needed Mark there. He couldn't know I was meeting Jessica, and he certainly couldn't know Jessica thought I was his ex. He had to walk into the scene, into the lie he had created, and see it implode around him. I knew Mark had a weekly coffee meeting with a client at that specific cafe on Wednesday afternoons. It was a routine he rarely broke. The timing was tight but perfect. I arranged the meeting with Jessica for the same time, at the same cafe, picking a table I knew would be visible from the entrance and near his usual spot, but not too close. The day arrived. Wednesday. My stomach was a knot of anticipation and dread. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that was professional but unremarkable. I didn't want to look like a difficult ex or a vengeful wife. Just present. Real. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, found the table, ordered a simple tea. My hands trembled slightly as I held the cup. I scanned the room. Mark wasn't here yet. Jessica wasn't here yet. The air felt thick with unspoken tension. Every person who walked through the door made my heart leap. Was it her? Was it him? The seconds stretched into an eternity. I rehearsed the scenario in my mind. Stay calm. Let her talk. Let her show the ring. Wait for Mark. Then deliver the line. 5 minutes later, the door opened again. Jessica walked in. I recognized her from her social media photos. She looked confident, perhaps a little nervous. She scanned the room, saw me, and walked towards the table. She sat down, placing her bag on the empty chair. She offered a polite, strained smile. Sarah? Jessica. I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. Thanks for meeting me, she said. I wasn't sure you would. I wanted to understand, I said, choosing my words carefully, playing the part of the ex seeking answers. Understand what's going on. Mark is happy, she stated, leaning forward slightly, her expression earnest. He's really happy with me. I know you were a big part of his life for a long time, and that must be hard, but he's moved on. We're building something real. Building something real on a mountain of lies, I thought bitterly. He told me everything about the divorce, she continued, her voice full of conviction. How difficult it was, how much you struggled to let go. I understand it's hard, but you need to respect his space now. Our space. I nodded slowly, keeping my gaze steady. Let her dig the hole deeper. She truly believed every word he'd fed her. He told you everything? I asked, making it sound like I was probing for details, like an ex trying to catch him out or understand the narrative he'd created. Yes, she said firmly. He was very open with me. He said it wasn't easy leaving, but it was necessary for his happiness. He said you were holding him back. Holding him back. The knife twisted. That's how he saw our life. As something that held him back. And you believe that? I asked, letting a hint of sadness and disbelief creep into my voice. I believe him, she said, loyalty shining in her eyes.
He's a good man.
He just needed someone who understood him. Someone who wanted the same things. My hand, resting on the table, clenched into a fist. I took a slow breath. Not yet. Wait for him. He said this is a new start for him. She went on, clearly wanting to convince me, and perhaps herself, of the legitimacy of their relationship. A complete break from the past.
Past.
That was me.
The past.
This was it. The moment. She reached into her bag. He wanted you to see this, she said, her voice softening again, that strange mix of sympathy for the ex and pride in her new status. And then she did it. She took out her hand, and on that finger, the solitaire ring gleamed. She slid it across the table towards me, just like in my imagination. He bought this for me, she said, her voice quiet now, almost reverent. It's a promise. A promise that we're building a future. That he's committed. He said he wanted you to know. My eyes fixed on the ring. It wasn't identical to my engagement ring, but it was almost exactly the same as the promise ring he'd given me years ago. A deliberate, sickening parallel. A symbolic replacement. My gaze lifted from the ring to her face, then past her, towards the entrance of the cafe. And there he was.
Mark.
Walking in, looking around, presumably for his client or for Jessica, depending on what story he'd told who. His eyes landed on our table. On Jessica. And then they landed on me. Sitting across from Jessica. Looking at the ring. His face went ashen. The color drained completely. His eyes widened, first in confusion, then in dawning horror. He froze just inside the doorway, a statue carved from pure panic. He hadn't expected me to be here. Not with her. Not like this. The two worlds he had so carefully kept separate had collided. Jessica saw the change in my expression, the shift in my gaze. She glanced over her shoulder, following my line of sight. She saw Mark, standing rigid by the door. She looked back at me, confused. Mark? What are you doing here? I didn't answer her. My eyes were locked on him. He was trapped. Utterly, completely trapped in the intricate web of lies he had woven. He had told her I was his ex. He had told me nothing. He had brought her here, somehow, perhaps planning to meet her after his client coffee, not knowing I had orchestrated this collision. The climax wasn't a shout or a scream. It was a quiet, cold unraveling. I looked at Jessica. Her gaze was flicking between me and Mark, confusion clouding her face. He told you I was his ex. I asked her, my voice low, steady, cutting through the tense silence of our table. She nodded, still bewildered.
Yes.
He said you were Sarah, his ex-wife.
I smiled then.
A cold, hard smile that didn't reach my eyes. I slowly reached out my hand, not towards the ring, but towards Jessica's. Funny, I said, my voice carrying just enough to reach Mark, who was still frozen by the door, unable to move. Because Mark Jenkins isn't my ex-husband. Jessica's eyes widened further. I turned my head slightly, looking directly at Mark, who was swaying on his feet. Right, darling? I said, the word a poison dart. Mark? Isn't that right? I'm not your ex. Jessica followed my gaze to Mark. The truth was slamming into her, moment by moment. The realization that the woman Mark had painted as a difficult ghost from his past was sitting right here, calling him darling. Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked between me and Jessica, the lie collapsing audibly in the sudden silence of the cafe. His carefully constructed worlds were imploding. The difficult ex wasn't an ex. The mistress wasn't dating a free man escaping a bad marriage. She was dating a cheating husband lying to both women. Jessica looked at me, then at the ring on her finger, then back at Mark. The pieces were falling into place, horrifyingly. He had lied. Not just to me, but to her. He had used her, just as he had used me. Sarah? Jessica whispered, her voice full of dawning horror. He told me you were his ex. I finished for her, my voice flat. He lied. Mark stumbled backward, bumping into a small table. Glasses clattered. A few heads turned, but everyone's attention was drawn back to the triangle at our table. Jessica slowly, mechanically, slid the ring back across the table, pushing it towards Mark, who still stood frozen. You lied to me, she said to him, her voice barely audible, filled with disbelief and hurt. You told me you were divorced. You said she was your ex. Mark finally seemed to find his voice, a strangled whisper. I can explain. Explain what? Jessica asked, her voice rising now, cracking with emotion. Explain why you told me your wife was your ex-wife. My wife. The word hung in the air. A truth he couldn't escape. Mark's face crumpled. The color drained from his lips. He clutched his chest. His eyes rolled back. And he collapsed. He didn't fall dramatically. It was more like his legs just gave out. He sank to the floor in a heap, knocking over the small table completely this time. A few cafe patrons gasped. Someone screamed. Chaos erupted. People rushed over. Was he having a heart attack? Jessica stared, her face a mask of shock and horror, not just at his collapse, but at the complete, utter betrayal that had just been exposed. The ring lay on the table between us, a silent, damning witness. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky, but my mind clear. The adrenaline was giving way to a cold, hollow feeling. Victory, but at what cost? While people tended to Mark, calling an ambulance, while Jessica stood frozen, tears silently tracking down her face, I looked at the ring on the table. It was a symbol of everything: his deceit, her unwitting involvement, my pain, my strategy, my victory. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights, sirens, questions from paramedics, and later, the police. Mark was taken away in an ambulance. Jessica, shattered and pale, was questioned separately. I gave my statement, calm and factual. I explained who I was, who she was, and what Mark had told us both. The ring remained on the table until a police officer carefully collected it as evidence. Jessica looked at me once before she left. Her eyes were full of hurt, anger, and confusion. She didn't apologize. She didn't need to. She was a victim of his lies too, just in a different way. The house felt empty when I returned. The silence was heavy, not with peace, but with the absence of the lie. Mark was in the hospital, his medical condition, stress-induced collapse, they said, a physical manifestation of his crumbling reality. The divorce was swift, relatively speaking. His public collapse, the witnesses, Jessica, the cafe staff, the police, the ring, it was all undeniable evidence of his deceit. His carefully constructed narrative fell apart completely. There was no room for him to paint me as the difficult ex anymore. The truth, exposed so dramatically, had set me free, but not in the way he had planned. Financially, I was secure. His infidelity and deceit provided leverage. Emotionally, it was a wasteland. Years of my life, my trust, my love, had been built on a foundation of lies. Rebuilding felt daunting. The betrayal ran deep. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the elaborate lengths he had gone to, the complete erasure of me from his chosen future. I kept the promise ring he had given me years ago, the one that mirrored the one he bought for her. Not as a memento, but as a reminder. A reminder of the lie, but also a reminder of my strength. I hadn't collapsed. I hadn't just endured. I had faced his deception head-on, used his own weapon against him, and emerged.
Wounded, yes.
But not defeated. Jessica? I never spoke to her again directly. I saw on her social media later that she had moved. Started fresh. I hope she finds someone who doesn't need to lie about his life to be with her. Mark, I heard he recovered, but the damage was done. Not just to his health, but to his reputation, his relationships. His carefully separated worlds had fused into a single, messy catastrophe of his own making. His freedom came at the cost of everything. Looking back, I see the quiet woman I was, living in a comfortable illusion. And I see the woman who emerged from the wreckage, colder, perhaps more wary but stronger, more discerning. He tried to write me out of his story, cast me as a forgotten character. But I took the pen back and wrote my own ending. An ending where the difficult ex wasn't the victim left behind, but the one who brought the curtain down on the performance. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever felt unseen, betrayed, or like you had to fight to reclaim your own narrative, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is. And thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.